Hello and welcome back to Below the Surface. I'm your host, Darshna Kamani, and here is my co-host, Stephanie Cavigliano. Hey, Steph.
Hey, Darshna, and hey, everyone. Darshna, how are you today? Are you ready for another episode?
I am indeed. It feels like it has been ages since the last one, even though it was only a month ago.
It does
definitely.
It feels like a long time. I agree. Good to see you.
Likewise. Now, we haven't spoken in a while, and I haven't asked you in a while. Well, how's dessert, sweets, treats going these days?
Well, I kind of put down the oven mitt, so I haven't been doing a lot of baking, but I'm still consuming plenty of sugar. So all is well and normal there. We have a very fancy ice cream place here in Northern California where I live, and they do flavors every month, seasonal flavors. And so not to be one to miss out on a seasonal flavor, we've been getting them all every month. So I've got like
what's the hot flavor this month?
My favorite this month was a jasmine milk tea with chocolate. It was delicious. Just divine.
That was lovely.
It was very good. So I've got like 6 pints of ice cream in my freezer at any given time. It's kind of
nice. I definitely, when we can, I need to travel to yours for sure. I have the issue of here in the UK, we have the ice cream van come about this time. And I always shout out to my child, go and get an ice cream, and no one goes and gets me one. So I'm definitely up for some ice cream. We need the weather to get a bit better here, but hopefully soon for sure.
Yeah, well, Darshna, no judgment. If you need to get up and leave to run and grab an ice cream, I don't want you to miss out.
Perfect. I'll leave you to it and I'll go and get my ice cream.
I'll cover.
Thank you. Anyway, I guess we should get to the topic of today, which we have a great topic. Just last week, Barracuda launched a market report on the state of application security. And today we will delve into some of those findings, as well as hear from the Natural History Museum in the UK why they have invested in application security.
Definitely a really interesting show lined up for you all today. But before we bring on our guests, please do say hello in the comment section. Feel free to ask questions to our experts and we'll ensure they get answered. And as always, let us know where you're tuning in from. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guests for today's show. We have Christian Jackson, Platform Manager at the Natural History Museum in London, and Nitzan Miron, VP of Product Management for Application Security at Barracuda Networks. Welcome to the show, Christian and Nitzan.
Hi there.
Thank you.
Thank you both for joining us today. Before we get into the topic, it would be great if you can tell us a bit about yourselves and your role. Christian, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Christian. I'm the platform team manager at the Natural History Museum. We're a small team and we mainly look after the website hosting, deployment of our websites, and all the routing. So that includes looking after the WAF or the WAF as a service, along with our security team.
And hey, my name is Nitzan. I run product management for our WAF and WAF as a service product line, so our entire application security portfolio.
Excellent. Thank you both. All right. So first, I want to start with you, Nitzan. What are some of the current application threats that you're seeing in the AppSec security space?
Well, it's interesting. I would say that the top threat is really the fact that attackers are getting more sophisticated. Whether they are coming after applications with bots, whether it's client-side attacks, whether it's supply chain attacks, whether it's, the interesting thing is, as well as these new things, it's still the good old OWASP top 10. The top 10 attacks, the top 10 web threats that have been around for definitely longer than 10 years, and they're still relevant. So, a lot of times we talk about the new and sexy and sophisticated threats, but the old threats that have been around for 10 years are just as prevalent. They're still being exploited just as much. But along with them come these more sophisticated attacks.
Nitzan, can you give us an example of what one of these attacks might look like from an end user perspective, just for those who are tuning in who may be new to the application security space?
Yeah, for example, with bots, we'll probably talk about them a little more later, but the idea is that a human can probably do reconnaissance on your website, on your application. They can slowly discover things that might be vulnerable, and they can exploit those things. But with bots, they can deploy millions, literally millions of bots to try and find holes in your website at the same time. And so they can go literally a million times faster than a human would ever go to try and find these holes and exploit them. And they can go faster than a human would ever be able to defend against if they were just manually looking at the logs and trying to put mitigations in place.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you for that. And Christian, any current threats that you've witnessed on your end in the application security space?
Yeah, probably bots again. We see them in the logs all the time. Luckily, we've got the WAF in front of it now, so it's not something we really have to worry about too much anymore. We can kind of rely on the WAF to look after us.
So I guess that takes us nicely, Christian, into why did you decide you needed a WAF as a service? What led the Natural History Museum to choose such a tool to help protect them?
Yeah, so we never originally went looking for WAF as a service. We got a requirement through to make all of our websites HTTPS. So that was a really good starting point, and we were looking at what's the easiest and most sort of complete way of doing that. So that led us on to looking at different web application firewalls. But we also knew we wanted to move that sort of network sort of transactional layer outside of our NHM boundary, out of our network. So we're looking at a WAF. We decided a WAF as a service is probably going to be the best solution for that, because we didn't want to have to look after the maintenance. We didn't want to have to look after the initial setup. We just wanted to really make use of kind of the work you guys did.
So Christian, can you tell us more about why you chose to go with Barracuda for your application security?
Well, we knew of your reputation from your hardware and your on-prem WAFs. That was one of the sort of big draws, and we thought, well, if we can grab some of that into the web application firewall as a service, then that'd be a good idea.
And how was the setup? You purchased Barracuda WAF as a service. How was the setup for you?
Yeah, pretty easy. We didn't really have to do a lot. You guys kind of set it all up for us, and then we just needed to start looking at our own routing, get our own firewall rules going. Initially, it was a bit difficult, and that was really due to a lot of complex routing on our side. But now we've simplified that. It's so much easier. For instance, a couple of weeks ago, we launched 2 new websites within the same week. So we can really just spin up the WAF application, set up the firewalls, and make the DNS change, and we're ready to go. Excellent.
Sounds pretty simple. Now, tell us, what difference have you seen since deploying WAF as a service?
Well, we spoke previously about bots. That used to be a bit of an annoyance. Well, it's an annoyance now. It was a real big problem previously. Like our uptime monitors used to go off at 11 o'clock at night, and someone's got to sign in, work out what's going on and how we react to that. Do we block it? Is there anything else we can do? But these days, it is all just handled by your WAF as a service. We don't have to be called in the middle of the night. So you're saving me a great deal of headaches.
That's great to hear. So just going back to threats and looking at kind of the state of application security, Nitzan, Barracuda obviously just launched a new market report. Can you tell us what are the key findings from that report?
Sure. I mean, I tend to be a very optimistic person, for those who know me, but this report really paints a pretty bleak picture of the state of application security. It's talking about how security professionals already in the past didn't feel like they had a good grasp on what they need to do to defend themselves against application security threats. And now, as we talked about, the attackers are getting more sophisticated, attacks are getting more complex, they're getting harder to defend against. And so, if these IT professionals were already not having a good handle on the situation. Now they feel even more that they don't have a good handle. And that's really, I think, the summary of the report is we're seeing threats become more sophisticated, attackers become more sophisticated, but IT professionals, security professionals are really not, they don't feel like they have a very clear understanding of what's going on and how to protect against it.
So one of the findings is that on average, respondent organizations were successfully breached twice in the past 12 months as a direct result of application vulnerability. So it seems like that should be enough to make organizations want to put the right protection in place to prevent those types of breaches. What do you think is stopping them?
Well, you know what? They are certainly trying to put the right protection in place. And it's really telling that we asked a question about how many of our respondents are not planning to deploy any new application security solutions in the next year, and 3% said that they were not. So that means 97% are planning to deploy some type of protection. I think the challenge for these people is typically the complexity of the solutions and the time it takes to get them set up and configured. So from 97% intend to deploy something, the question is how many will actually get something deployed, how many will get it configured properly and get it to a point where it's working properly. And it's important to also mention the false positives. Everyone's probably experienced an overzealous security solution, right? You're trying to get your work done, you're trying to do something, and suddenly it pops up and it gets in your way and it blocks, you're trying to get a purchase order and it's blocked by your email security system, or you're trying to go download some software and you can't install it because your antivirus is, overzealous. And in the case of web applications, it can get a lot worse, right? If you have an online shop and people can't buy anything from your online shop because your security system is blocking them, well, that's a serious business distraction, business impact, right? So finding that middle ground between, yes, we want to deploy a security solution, but it's complex to get it configured, and we want to make sure that doesn't disrupt the business. That's maybe what's stopping them.
Christian, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think is stopping organizations from putting something like WAF as a service in place?
I don't know, really. Since we've been using it, it seems so easy. I suppose it's a bit like insurance. Like it's worth having. You don't want to get it. You don't want to start using a WAF when it's too late. So, yeah, I really don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned not even seeking this solution out. I'm wagering to bet that maybe folks don't know that they need it a lot of times until it's too late.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So both of you have mentioned bot attacks. Nitzan, can you explain to our audience, those who, like we've said, may not know that they need some protection, what are these attacks and what should they be protecting against?
Sure. So, a bot attack is really any attack that's carried out not by a human, but by a fleet of automated scripts that are probably written by a human, but really are operating somewhat autonomously. So instead of a human just sort of manually doing one thing at a time, you can have thousands, millions of these bots doing something specific at the same time. And what that really gives the attackers is the ability to do things at scale. So just to give you a classic example, maybe we want to guess somebody's password, and I'm a human, I can try to guess one password every second. Well, if I deploy 1 million bots, I can guess 1 million passwords every second, and I can find that password a lot faster. Another example is, let's say that you are launching a new product, and you only have, let's say, 20,000 of those products available to buy. And maybe you have an audience of people who are trying to get a hold of that product when it's launched, at the exact moment it's launched. Well, an attacker can write a bot at the very second that the product is launched. They can go grab all 20,000 in the first second, and no human just has a chance, right? They'll buy up all 20,000 and they'll go sell them for double the price on eBay. This has happened very often with shoes and with PlayStations, and you just really are powerless to stop it because of how fast it happens.
So Nitzan, how do organizations protect themselves against these types of attacks?
Well, the way you protect yourself against bots is by identifying the bots and then taking some action like blocking them. But that's easier said than done. The problem is that these bots do a really good job of disguising themselves as legitimate users. They try to act like a user. They try to do the same things that a human would do. They even put in delays. They don't do things super fast. They do things at the speed that a normal human would do sometimes, that it sort of looks like a human. It's very hard to tell that they're not legitimate. So just as an example, let's say somebody adds a product to their shopping cart and goes through the checkout process, puts in their shipping address, their credit card, and completes the purchase. That's a very legitimate flow, right? It's not anything that's damaging. It's not anything that your security system would flag and say, hey, they're doing something wrong. The problem is if a million sessions are doing that simultaneously, how do you know which of the 999,000 of those million are malicious bots and which of the 1,000 are actually legitimate users who are trying to actually buy your product? So, I mean, they're all doing the same things, right? They're all going through the same exact steps in the same order. How do you identify them? And that's really why there's an entire suite of products, including Barracuda's products, that are specifically built to identify super, super tiny variances in how bots operate differently from humans. And many times it's something that even a human wouldn't notice, but these algorithms that are built by tens of engineers over years can find these tiny minuscule differences and point them out and catch the bots.
Wow, it's doing a lot. So Christian, do you have any thoughts here? How has the Natural History Museum been protecting themselves against these? Has it been just as easy as implementing Barracuda WAF as a service?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's our main sort of piece of protection. There's a number of components within WAF as a service that we use, and it does a pretty good job at protecting us.
And I think that's really the key, right? Is the systems that do this are super, super complex. They're super complicated. They're super sophisticated. 15 engineers spent 2 years writing them. But in the end, the goal is to have it be simple, right? The goal is to have it be a button that somebody can push, and it just does all the work for them.
Right. As simple as it might be for the cyber criminals to launch these bots, we want it to be just as easy on the end user's end to protect against them. Makes sense.
Definitely. So the other type of attack and things we've seen in the report is talk around APIs and the security around them. Why have they become such a huge concern?
Well, I mean, that's actually very simple. It's because APIs have grown in popularity. So if you look back, 5-10 years, most applications were not deployed as APIs. So APIs were relatively rare, and when you did have APIs, they were not very sensitive. These days, almost all new applications that are deployed as APIs. And so there's just been a proliferation and growth of the number of APIs and also the types of things that you can do with an API, right? So now if your banking application uses an API, that means that there's an API available to transfer money from one bank account to another. And that's obviously a very juicy target for an attacker. So as more and more things are being deployed as APIs, there has been more of a concern, obviously, for the protection of those APIs.
So why do you think that organizations feel that more improvement is needed for their API security, Nitzan? What are some of the challenges they're encountering?
Well, the problem is that APIs are attacked in different ways than traditional applications. And the type of protection you would put in place for a traditional application doesn't really work for APIs. So if you put just a naive security solution that's not designed to work with APIs, it would be pretty easy to bypass it for an attacker. So, and the problem is this is a new field, right? If you're a security professional and you've been in the field for many years, you're maybe used to protecting traditional applications, you've honed those skills, but APIs are an entirely new field, and you sort of have to learn from scratch how to protect them, what mechanisms to use, what products to use, and even many vendors that have application security solutions are struggling to adapt to this new API world. So even if you already have a security solution in place, it's not necessarily going to protect your APIs properly. So that's sort of the challenge for security professionals is, okay, do my current solutions work, and do I have to learn a whole new world from scratch?
Christian, anything to add there? Some of the challenges around API security in your experience?
Yeah, API security is quite a big deal for us at the moment. As Nitzan was saying, most of our applications we're creating these days are API based, whether that's being consumed by a different team in the museum or a contractor that we're working with. Our new ticketing website works exactly like that. And we have to make sure that API is up and secure. Otherwise, we can't deliver tickets. And with the current COVID restrictions at the moment, if you have to have a ticket to come to the museum, so if you can't use our site to get a ticket or get one on the door, we can't operate. So it's a big concern for us.
So another threat that came up in the report, in kind of some of the top attacks that organizations have seen, is software supply chain attacks. Nitzan, can you delve into those a little bit more? What are they, and why are they, again, such a big concern?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at its core, if you think about it, applications are not built from scratch. If you build a brick house, you don't go and bake every single brick yourself and then put it in the house, right? You go and you buy the bricks from a supplier, and you probably buy the mortar from a supplier, and you buy other pieces. And most apps are in the same way. They're built using third-party libraries or third-party components. And in the past, applications would maybe use just a few of these components, and they would be sort of well-known and used for years, right? I've been using these same bricks from the same supplier for 10 years, and they've been working fine. But with modern application security practices, most modern applications are actually built from tens or even hundreds of external modules. So think of these like bricks from a third-party supplier. And the problem is these will change rapidly, right? And so it's not just like the same bricks you used every time. You actually change the types of bricks that you're using and the supplier that you're getting it from. So to end the metaphor and go to the actual applications, they're built using maybe 100 or 200 external third-party modules, and those modules are dynamically pulled in from somewhere like GitHub. So now there are 100 different suppliers that actually add code to the application that somebody's delivering. And any one of those suppliers getting compromised, now you can have compromised code going into the final application. And the compromised code can do whatever it wants, right? It can steal credit card numbers, it can interfere with the application. And so as we get to trying to protect against 200 different users, 200 different external modules, it becomes really complicated.
Sounds like a big problem. Christian, have you seen anything similar at the Natural History Museum? Is this something you guys face?
It's not something I've experienced. It's always something we're aware of and that we're looking at. So anything we can do to help prevent that is always sort of top of our list.
So Nitzan, Barracuda has recently launched CAP 2.0, or Cloud Application Protection. Can you tell us more about this and how it can help to alleviate some of the challenges that were raised in the report?
Oh yeah, gladly. And of course, this is where I get excited, right? I've painted this bleak picture for you. I've talked about how complicated things are. I've talked about how difficult it is for security professionals who don't know what to do to effectively protect themselves. And CAP 2.0 is really Barracuda's answer. We launched CAP 1.0, I think it was maybe a year and a half ago. And CAP 2.0 is looking at the latest types of threats, things like bots, like supply chain attacks, and putting together a comprehensive suite of solutions that can protect against those types of attacks. So CAP 2.0 really at its core combines WAF, or WAF as a service, with additional cloud intelligence services that combat things like bots, like those supply chain attacks, and just the traditional attacks that are just becoming more sophisticated. And one of the things that CAP 2.0 does is it combines a lot of these cloud intelligence services into one umbrella that we're calling active threat intelligence. And that's where those algorithms that I talked about before run, the one that took 15 engineers 2 years to write, the ones that can detect in real time these tiny minuscule differences between how a bot operates or how a human operates, the ones that can detect compromise in a third-party library, one of the hundreds that you use. And the most important part about CAP 2.0 is the ease of use. And I'm hearing that from Christian, sort of over and over again. Yeah, we know it's a problem, but I don't really know the details. And that's really our goal at Barracuda with CAP, right? Make it easy for our customers, for the people using our protection, to just get it deployed and not have to worry about all these details.
Thanks for that, Nitzan. I guess it's kind of like a light at the end of the tunnel for end users, at least, to get some support with all the attacks. Just going back to the report, and as we're coming to the end of the show, one last question. Were there any other findings you want to highlight from the report, or findings that surprised you?
It actually surprised me, given, we just talked about a couple minutes ago how many organizations don't even know that they need protection. They're not even aware that they have a problem. And so it really surprised me that we asked that question of how many people are planning to deploy what types of solutions in the next year. And like I said before, only 3% said they're not planning to deploy anything. And a huge percentage are actually planning to deploy solutions for the specific attacks that we talked about. So 40% said they were going to deploy a bot protection solution in the next year. 35% said they were going to deploy API protection. 33% said they were going to deploy supply chain protection. That's actually a little bit of optimism, in the bleakness that I've been talking about, where it actually does seem like vendors, or like customers are starting to understand, or rather I should say security professionals are starting to understand the problems that they have, and they're making concrete plans to address those problems and deploy solutions for them.
No, yeah, I mean, I guess that shows there's definitely some awareness out there around there's protection needed from these type of attacks. Christian, just to you, was there anything in the report that you found surprising or wanted to highlight?
I'm not sure there's anything that surprised us, but it was kind of nice to know that our sort of main concerns, like bots, API security, is not just a concern for the museum, but it's an industry-wide concern. So yeah, it's kind of warming to know that that's out there and that you guys are doing stuff about that.
Good to know that you're not alone.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, guys. Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for today, but I want to thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Nitzan.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then remember, you can watch all of our LinkedIn live shows from the Barracuda LinkedIn page. All you have to do is follow us on LinkedIn and you can see them all there. For now, that leaves us to say, until next time, have a safe journey.